Welcome to the Salty Sarge Podcast. Tech Guy here. Hope you're enjoying your week, and please enjoy part 2 of an interview with our good friend, Tommy.
I said, what are you going to do about the major spot? And his response was, I'm not going to backfill it. I'm going to take that role. So the sergeants will answer directly to me. And I said, can I have a minute? And I stepped out in the hallway and called Renee, like literally right then, said, I'm going to be working directly for this guy. He's not going to backfill. That was my next step. That's where I should have been the next step. He's dissolving it. So now I don't have anywhere to go. And I can't stand the dude. I cannot answer directly to him. And she said, I've been waiting on this phone call for years. Turn your shit in and get the hell out of there. Nice. And we'll make it on my salary until you figure something out. And I did. I walked back in there and said, you want 2 weeks or you want to just come get my shit? And he said, basically what he told me is I drove the sheriff's truck there and he said, you need to have somebody come get you. And
oh, wow.
And I said, so I'm quitting giving you my 2 weeks and I can't drive that patrol vehicle home and get all my shit out of it and do all that. And he finally agreed to let me do that. But that's why I quit. I wasn't going to work for him. I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I haven't had a lot of bosses that bad, but he was arrogant. He thought he knew everything. He wouldn't listen to anybody else.
Oh my God. I hate that because I have a guy like that I work with and it's like, you know, that's not a leader. Mm-mm. That's a micromanager. A true leader will accept criticism. They will accept, like, I had some captains that I worked with on an extra job and they were always like, they would have my ear. They would always have me by their ears. They're like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I would just flat out tell them. Like, sometimes I'm like, I don't agree with that, dude. Like, that's not, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, that's none of your business, you know? And they're like, oh, okay. And so I don't know if you've ever seen the show Blue Bloods.
Yeah.
Where you got, which from my understanding is nothing like that agency. Yeah. It's horrible, but that's the kind of guy that, you know, that commissioner is what a lot of chiefs wanted to be after. But, and, you know, he developed that position. He just took some guy that was a sergeant, that was a supervisor at the detective bureau. And he was like, hey, the guys aren't going to like that. And he took him and they put him in this role like, hey, I want you to be a liaison for me.
Correct.
To get the ear of the streets. And I really do wish multiple agencies had that. Not just your union, you know, not your FOP, but a guy that could go there and say, hey, chief, this is the word and feedback I'm getting, where he goes to divisions. He talks to patrol officers like, hey, what can we do to make your job easier? You know, and let me relay. And so you're not directly we had one chief that just, he was there one way too long. And two, he was always an investigator.
Yeah.
So he loved investigations and treated patrol like we were the shit on the bottom of the boot.
Yeah.
And which we are treated that way. I feel like there's a detachment there. So he thought, hey, I'll just go to divisions and we'll do a Q&A. But you need to email me the questions first, because we had a situation where he just kind of went in improv. Mm-hmm. And of course, some old sergeants really just tore into it. You know, like, you know, and he's like, okay, next time don't do that. But he tried that approach. It's like, why not have a guy that's just an average Joe police officer, like a master sergeant, a master patrolman, that's like, hey, what are you guys feeling right now? How are things going? Don't have any commands allowed in the room. Like, no lieutenants, you know, no captain, shift captain. You talk to me. This is a safe space. You tell me what's going on. And if you want me to relay it up, I will. If you don't, if I think it doesn't need to be relayed, I won't. Because and with the new chief coming in, there was a situation that was really funny, because I was an FTO and I'd never seen a chief come to an FTO meeting. Like, we'd have, and really FTOs they're a critical position on the department.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're laying groundwork and you're putting in a lot of work for these future officers that you may be partnered with, that may be your supervisor. They may be the chief someday.
Yeah.
So, you know, he comes in and he was a real strong FTO at the time, back in the day. And he was always in training, and he was never an investigator, never did any type of investigation. So he came in and we're just kind of like, what's up with this? You know, he had a couple of chiefs in there and we're all kind of like, he goes, what's up? I go, well, I've never seen this before. Like, I've never seen that chief, this chief. I knew him because personal experiences outside the department with Special Olympics stuff and stuff like that. But on a work level, I never worked directly for them or knew what they were about. So we just knew names, you know, so we didn't know these guys. And these officers are chiming in. They're younger. They're like, yeah, you know, we don't have cars. It's just a pain in the butt to train. You have to come to work. no pool cars. You have to wait for third shift to come in, and you got your FTO. And that is stressful. That is.
Yeah.
And then I'm kind of like, that's kind of a good gripe. This one chief pipes up and he goes, well, stop wrecking them. And I was like, the room got quiet. I go, he's got you there. Touche, So I point you, everybody starts laughing. And I was like, and that's kind of where I kind of started putting things in perspective. I'm like, that makes sense. Like, I didn't think of it like that, quit wrecking them. Because, and he goes, for example, you guys are wrecking cars right and left, like for stupid stuff.
Yeah.
I think those guys needed to hear that from them because they all kind of shut up, and it's kind of like, and then their driving improved. And then guess what? More cars showed up. And that's my mentality. So I kind of put myself in his shoes, because I would have said the same thing. Like, don't wreck my cars and you'll be fine.
Yeah, there'd be a lot more cars if they weren't in a junkyard.
It is going to happen, but don't go out there and don't be stupid about it.
Yeah.
But that's just funny. And I think a lot of officers that resign from positions, I think it's either administration. It's two things. It's administration or an event that occurred that was devastating or detrimental to them mentally, that they just couldn't, or they just don't want to get face the music of the media and stuff. So they just resign. Yeah. So, that was my thing. I mean, I will say command will make or break you. There's no doubt about that.
That's what happened for sure in my case. Like, I was a lifer. I'd never even considered quitting. Like,
so the transition for you when you left, was it pretty easy?
No, it was very difficult. It was very difficult. So I'd left. After I left sheriff's office, I went and got my armed security license because some buddies of mine were working at a company called Deco, and they did contract security for the Homeland Security, so federal buildings, stuff like that.
Okay.
Armed security positions. And so it paid really well. It was like $30 an hour, but it was that was contract, 1099. You're a contracted employee. You don't get insurance, no benefits. You're just $30 an hour. Here you go. Cash, basically, I went to work there for, I don't remember, 6 months or a year. But the problem was it was a union job. So you said union. We couldn't have a union at the sheriff's office. We just didn't have a union. So I went to here. I was like, oh, union job there. You can't screw you around as bad. Well, I learned that was horse shit. They can still do all kinds of nasty stuff. So I went and worked there, but it's a bid job. So you have all these posts that are assigned, to this company. And at the beginning of the year, people bid on them based on union seniority. And when you hire in, you're obviously you're going to
get the crappiest spots. Yeah.
Well, and so you're basically a filler. They got 10 or 20, however many fillers.
So if a guy calls in, you go to that spot. Ooh.
So I traveled to Ardmore to Clinton to Stillwater to Tulsa, everywhere. I'd get a call the night before at 9, 10, 11 o'clock, says, can you be in Clinton tomorrow at 8 a.m., which is a 2-hour drive or whatever. So I got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, drive to Clinton on my own. I mean, they paid you mileage, and if it was a multi-day gig, they would, somebody's taking the week off.
You're in your POV.
Correct.
Driving to these positions. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Now, they did pay you 50, 60 cents a mile, so it was actually beneficial. Me and Renee had a small car, so I'd jump in her little small car, my big butt, get in her little bitty car, and drive 2 hours to wherever the post was. And sometimes in the city, there's the federal building in the city and Social Security offices around here and stuff like that. But most of mine seem to be the guy in the supervisor that covers Southern Oklahoma liked me, so that's where most of my work was. Okay, but Ardmore and Lawton and stuff like that. But
did you think about going and working at another municipality?
I didn't. No, so that was my immediate, I'm just going to make money doing that. I took off a couple months, just kind of get my head straight, and then I went to work there. And that was just kind of because how it takes a long time for people that hadn't been in law enforcement. It's not like going to apply at Walmart. It's a long process typically. You're going to apply, especially somewhere like Oklahoma City. I mean, they only do 1 or 2 academies a year or something. So
yeah, larger municipalities. I mean, it is, and at that time it was difficult. The budgeting too. It's all about budget. Some big cities may say, well, we don't have enough money to pay off to have academies. So and it could take you up to 6 months a year. So even being a trooper is a 6-month process. Yeah. I mean, they just don't. You're right. I mean, it's not like going to. like 7-Eleven and fill an application and then, even Walmart. So
they'll say you're hired like right then and you can you start tomorrow or when can you start? So I just thought, well, I'll take this job and that'll give me time to not have to hurry and I can apply other places. And I was steaming about it. I was mad. I was mad that I left, that I put all that time in there and I was either going to have to move or I was going to have to go to a big municipality, which I just really didn't care to work for a big municipality for some reason. It just never appealed to me. I was always thinking I wanted to be sheriff's office or a small PD or something where I felt like I was, maybe I just felt like I would be, be more than just than another dude. If there's only 6 or 8 of you, you're pretty important,
I never thought about it like that.
Maybe that's what it was. I don't really know, but anyway, so I was looking at like Mustang PD, seems like a pretty decent size and stuff, but so I was looking at those places and I just decided I wanted to look and see what else was out there. And so I started applying at, what happened was I walked into an AT&T phone store and this guy was, bouncing around, whistling, having a good time, basically just seemed happy as hell about my age and just seemed happy. And I was like, dude, you like your job? I mean, you seem to be pretty happy. And you're smoking weed, what's going on here? And I just started talking to him, and the guy basically said it was AT&T, and he said he was a union guy. He said he worked Monday through Friday, like 9 to 6 or 9 to 5 or something. And I was like, man, yeah, but can you afford to live? Like, he made $15,000 more than I made leaving the sheriff's office at the position I was in. He's making like $60,000, which I left making mid 40s as I'm in a pretty high ranking person at the sheriff's office. And I thought, what the hell? This is crazy. So I said, well, I'm just going to shits and giggles. I'm going to apply to a couple of them, see what happens. And then Verizon Wireless called me and took a couple months, but yeah, I got hired in and from April till December, I made about $60,000 that year. I made $15,000 more than I did the year before.
Oh, wow.
In 4 less months. And I mean, days off. But that was the struggle. The struggle wasn't finding a job that paid more. It wasn't finding a job that was easy. Cause I mean, obviously at that point I was a retail sales rep. So I went and stood on the store floor and people would come in and say, my iPhone's broken. I'd say, let me sell you a new one. And so that wasn't the problem. The problem was after 11 years of being a cop and being, as my wife says, that a-hole, I didn't want to be in public. I didn't want to go in public. I didn't want to be around people because I saw the nastiness in people doing this job. The death and destruction people do themselves and family and each other.
And see, that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like, and I'm not saying that we're not abnormal, but we kind of are.
Yeah.
There are days, it's hard for some people in my life, in my inner circle or my surrounding circle to understand that when I come home from work, I may not want to be social.
Yeah. I
may just literally want to just chill out and be left the hell alone. Yeah. And something you pointed out is a lot of people don't see that side of me.
Yeah.
They see, me as
pretty outgoing dude,
and outgoing. And then whenever I come home and I just want to be in, you're like, well, you understand it.
Oh yeah.
And whenever you were telling me that day, like you're telling someone, well, he may have had a long day.
Yeah. You have no idea.
And he doesn't, he carries it, and some people have seen me where was doing my job and they saw a side of me and then they see me with my family and they're like, he's like a family guy. He's so good with his kids and stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, he has to be. I mean, he puts on a suit. He puts on, it's no different than an OG&E guy.
That's right.
Loading up in a truck. He's on shift working and he comes home and he's throwing the ball with his son. I mean, there's no different. It's just, it's hard for me, a normal person, sometimes to turn it off and on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, you're up here, your levels are so high. And that's why officers don't live long. After you do a 25, 30 year career, your heart's a transmission for your body.
Yeah.
And it is elevated. It is, your RPMs are higher. And now I can control it better than most. Some people have an event. I've seen them like after a major event or a crash even, and they're over there and then that adrenaline, they've never had that adrenaline rush, which is like a high, if you will, for some people. Yeah. And it's the anxiety of it, and they pass out and fall over and they piss themselves, they shit themselves. Yeah. I mean, they have this, but yet an officer can do that every day, 10 hours a day, where you're going from call to call where it's like, whoosh, whoosh, you're just up and down. Well, that puts pressure on your body.
Oh yeah.
and, you know, your heart. So, I mean, and I could see, you know, and that's where a lot of guys try to work out, or they try to, you know, you have a zen where, you know, you go do other things where, you know, I like to do woodwork and stuff, or mess around my shop, you know, where you're just at your release, you know, where you're a tinker or something.
And that's where I, you know, if I was giving advice to a young officer, it would be that, to find that release, because I never did. I worked my full-time job. I worked my off-duty jobs. I worked my full-time. I was putting in 60, 70 hours a week. I was after work. If I didn't have a call that took me past time, I would sit there and BS with the next shift supervisors, or, you know, hell, half time I'd go sit down and have coffee with the guys, you know, like I lived and breathed it, and I didn't have an outlet. And that probably,
I did the same thing.
Probably was the reason for my premature burnout, because I literally worked 20 years in 10. Like, I just did so much extra. Every special event, every parade, every cool, like Sheriff's Hall, you know, they'd be like, hey, we're going to go patrol the river this weekend. We're going to take, you know, anybody want to volunteer to jump on the side by sides and go.
That's fun.
And so you're like, hell yeah, I'm going to do that. So you
just kind of like, you tell your wife, like, hey, enjoy the kids, you know, and
exactly.
And they're getting pissed off, you know, like, really? And that's where it's hard for me with, you know, I'm in a situation where, you know, it's this breathing room for me, some of these extra work, which my side hustles were mainly just so I could have things extra, like a trip, or I don't rely on it, but it does suck when you're not, like, when you get injured, you can't work that stuff.
Oh yeah.
So that extra, you know, cash that coming in, that little pocket money and it sucks. And it's difficult. That's what's bothering me right now. I was like, I don't have my little pocket money. Yeah. You know, but I also was starting to get to a point to where I was picking up more stuff, and I was getting tired. I was, you know, spreading myself too thin. And I think I was like, man, mentally, I just needed a break, and I didn't want to get in a crash to have a break, but it has been a pretty good break. But a lot of times officers, though, they don't make enough money to where they have to do that. Yeah. And it's like, you're doing that so much, and you do get burned out. Cause the first 10 years on the department, I was working my tail off. I mean, I can tell you right now, I worked every weekend. And every Thursday, every Thursday, I worked for 10 years. Every single Thursday evening, I was working somewhere with the department. And every Saturday and Sunday, I only had one weekend off of and I was in the military too. So I had never had weekends. I mean, and I look back, but I was pre-kids. And now it's like, God dang, and I feel guilty sometimes. I'm like, man, I really don't want to work, because I don't want to be that dad that, you know, I talk about my dad on the department, you know, he worked a lot of extra jobs. So there were times I never saw him. Yeah. And I don't want that. You know, I don't want my kids to go, well, my dad's not around because he's working. Mm-hmm. You know, I want to be in a position where it's like, hey, you know, and it's hard because the money is so good and it's so easy to do. Yeah. You know, I tell, you know, tech guy, I'm like, hey, I'm going to work this gig and I'm getting $60 an hour cash. He's like, God dang, I would kill for something like that, you know? And I'm like, I know. Mm-hmm. And you just stand there. You're not doing anything. I mean, you're just literally standing there looking at people, showing them that, hey, you're not going to do something stupid tonight, or I'm going to have to get involved. And nine times out of 10, you don't have to do anything. So you're sitting in your car bored off your butt. You're watching a storage building at night, and you're just sitting there. And you're just like, God, this sucks. But now with smartphones, it makes it a little easier because you have a TV in the palm of your hand and stuff like that. But
if I take a pee break real quick?
Yeah, you want to take a pee break? That's fine. Yeah, we're going to take a quick break.
We will be right back after this quick break. And we're back from that quick break. We are here still with Tommy. He has been sharing his stories about county and life after. And the first thing I wanted to ask was, you talked about this new job that you work. How long have you been with working for like cell phone companies?
Well, about 12 years now.
12 years now. And the one thing that kind of strikes me as interesting is we had a conversation yesterday about this, actually. You had mentioned how there are some skills that translated from something that was in law enforcement to something as kind of toned down as selling cell phones.
Yeah.
What can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, it's kind of funny because in my interview for Verizon Wireless, I was interviewing with the store manager, and one of the questions is, tell us where you've sold something before. And I'm going, I've never sold anything in my life. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't have anything to tell him. So luckily I just kind of clicked in my head. I said, you know, I haven't ever sold a product, but I sold a lot of people into getting into handcuffs and giving away their freedom to me willingly. And I can translate that to a cell, because if you think about it, nobody wants to put the handcuffs on. And part of it is some of them are going to do it just because you have a badge and they're going to respect the badge. Some of them are going to do it because you're, in my case, bigger than them. There's some of them that are thinking in their head, am I going to fight? Am I going to flee? What am I going to do when this guy goes to put me in cuffs? And that's what we were just talking about, is being able to read the room, read the person.
There you go.
And sometimes kinesics and behavior, I don't know if you've taken any of those classes, but reading body language, that kind of stuff. I'd take one of those classes, and just like with, I had this guy and I was trying to talk to him. I just tell by the way he was like, just his little movements, that he was slowly trying to position himself in a direction to run. Like I could just tell he wanted to run. So once I figured out what he's doing, I'd just creep around and move in front of him.
There you go.
And just keep blocking his exit. Like I just wanted to make sure, because I was going to arrest him. I knew I was going to arrest him. I was waiting on backup to get closer because he looked like a runner. And anyway, so those kind of behaviors, those kind of skills, 100% translated over to cells. I'm naturally good at it, I believe. I think it was something that those years of law enforcement, of having to convince somebody to give up their freedoms, it's a lot easier to talk somebody into buying that new iPhone
They probably already wanted.
that they were going to want anyways, or something they were thinking about doing. Their wife just was giving them a hard time about. But, now I do just business sales, and my supervisory experience at the sheriff's department, even though I'm not supervising people, understanding how things work and how businesses operate, how the sheriff's office operated because of those skills, definitely translated over to the business world, because I have to understand how those businesses work in order to convince them to buy things, or convince them that there is a return on the investment they're fixing to make. So there are tons of stuff. And so when somebody gets out of law enforcement, they don't have to think that they have to just go into security. I mean, that's, a lot of them go into private investigations or security work, or they leave the police department and go to the sheriff's office because they want to keep their insurance, that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a whole lot of different paths out there that.
Yeah, and that's good to know, because I feel like there are a lot of law enforcement people who may be thinking about getting out, but they also think it's like, what skills do I have?
Yeah.
I've been a police officer. This is what I know. I don't know anything else.
But when you asked me how the transition was, that was the hard part. My ego. My ego was the hard part. Standing there on a retail floor, some of the people I was working with my age, some of them were 20-year-old, 21-year-old kids. My ego of going, months ago, I was out here patrolling the streets and taking people to jail and driving 100 miles an hour and telling people what to do. And I was the boss of everybody I ever talked to. Like me being the supervisor, especially, every person I talked to, generally 99% of the people I talked to on a daily basis, I could tell what to do. And then go into this retail store where everybody that walks through that store is my boss now. My boss is my boss. The assistant boss is my boss. My peers are all my bosses because they all have way more seniority than me. Like I'm sitting here as this little, nothing. I'm less than nothing. And that was the hardest part, is fighting my ego.
Yeah.
So it was more humbling then.
It was very humbling. And
I think that's the hard part for a lot of, you watch a lot of videos and stuff. You see reels and stuff of officers getting agitated or getting riled up by somebody. And we didn't have that. That just became a thing recently within the last, I'd say probably
getting riled up, or just having it on video.
Just people coming up to you and just basically with you, you know? And I think that, just purposely doing that. And I'm starting to see a trend where a lot of officers are tired of messing with, they're like, dude, just leave. That's how I am. I'm like, dude, just leave me alone. Yeah. Or I'll call people out. Like, you don't have to be a douchebag about it. I just get in my car to leave. Or, I just avoid it. And I think that's where a lot of guys these younger officers, it's just they're not humble enough to go, this is not worth my time. This is dumb. Yeah. And that's one thing I push with the younger officers. Now, look, don't get sucked into that. And, because I'm really considering, leaving the profession within a few years. And if not, it depends on how stuff play out on the back end of what I've got going on in my role. But if I could do it, I would so do it. And I think I'm mentally just accepting that. Yeah. Like, I think it's going to take me, the shock and awe of me turning in my, my badge and like having a retired badge is going to be different. But I'm not one. I'll tell you, folks. I don't carry often. I don't off duty. I'll have my gun with me at certain places, but I don't want to be involved in stuff. I don't like telling people that I'm in the career field, like in public. Or I don't like if we go meet up with someone because my son's t-ball team last year. They didn't all know what I did. I was kind of off to the side, and because I don't like being involved too much in stuff. I make a lot of decisions in my profession. That's all I do for 10 hours. Decisions, and you just don't want to mess with that. So, I had this couple like ask me like, what do you do? And I told them like, oh, and everybody just kind of like, they just all kind of congregate to you and they all have stories. Why? So it's just like, God dang, I don't want to mess with this right now. I just want to watch my son play t-ball, or I don't care. And, I don't, they're shocked that I'm an officer. I appear to be one, or I'm quiet, and I don't care. Yeah. I mean, I'm a goofy, even my father-in-law is like, you're the goofiest guy out there, out away from that uniform. But when you're in uniform, you're like, it's go time. But I've had several officers like, you're just a goofball all around. Yeah. And I've transitioned to that because you have to be. You have to, if you're sitting there and it all built up. I mean, I've got guys that had heart attacks on the job, and it's because they're so tense. I was like, dude, you're a ticking time bomb. Yeah. You just need to relax, like just woosah, just let it go. Yeah. But I think that's where I'm at. I think it's just, and that's where my thing is. It's all I know, and I don't know of any other jobs because I don't have the education, and I'm 40 plus years old. I don't want to start a new career over. Yeah. And, risk that. I'm not a risk taker like some. I just don't. I just assume stay in this profession and then never be retired and never do anything else. But I was like, I may work at Atwoods or something. I don't know. And just walk around and help people.
If they had Walmart greeters, that'd be the perfect job for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Atwoods or Truck Spot or Lowe's, because I could see guys coming in like young kids, like, hey, I got this part. What do you need? Because I know Lowe's like in the back of my head, like. Yeah. Well, what you need is this, like, because I had this one old timer one time. I come in and he goes, you look puzzled. I go, I don't know what this is. He goes, that's your clean out. You need this. He took me right down and he knew it. I didn't know. Yeah. And he goes, boom, here you go. That's what you need. And I was like, thank you. And I told my dad, I said, someday I might do that. Down the road, I might help these younger people come in. I'm like, hey, that's on this aisle, and
I wish I knew the electrician's name. I was standing in Lock Supply and I was trying to put wiring in my shop. And so anyways, the breaker I needed, the panel, I needed a 100 amp breaker, and I was at Lock trying to figure it out, but all of them had this little barb in there, like this little, it wouldn't let me put the breaker all the way in. There's this little metal piece in there that was stopping it from going in, and it was the same brand. I couldn't figure it out. I was so perplexed, and obviously I looked distressed, and this electrician came by, and he goes, hey man, what's going on? I can see so this electrician came by, and he said, oh yeah, he said, so let me see your breaker. I showed him the breaker. I brought the existing one. And he said, and this, you're needing 100 amps. I said, yeah. And he took his pliers out of his pocket and he goes, he pulled that little metal piece out and he goes, there you go. And I was like, what? Why is that a thing? He goes, well, it's just this stupid shit. They want you to buy the new panel, and then those breakers only fit the new panels, and to get the old breakers, they charge you out the butt for them. They're really expensive. They put that little part in there to keep you from using them, the new breakers and the old panels. And he pulled it out and said, it'll fit right away. And I went home. Stuff like that. It's just like, because I was looking, it was like $200 or $300 for this 100 amp breaker without that thing. And I paid $20-$30 or whatever. And he saved me so much money and headache. And so, yeah, I love being that guy.
Well, even when I'm working, I'll pull up to a place. Like I had an issue where we had a big bad frost storm, got real cold, and inside your hot water tank, there's these little parts in there that froze and burst. And it's like a little tube. Yeah. I didn't know what the hell it was. So I'm working. I have a recruit. I say, hey, go over here. And I walk in there and there's plumbers everywhere because everybody's pipes are busting, And I walk in. I said, hey, fellas. I just walk in and they're like, hey, what's up, man? And the first thing everybody's like, I didn't do it. I go, well, somebody did this shit, And I'm like, I go, what is that? And they're like, oh, that's this. He goes, you don't need it, though. He goes, that's a code thing, but nah, it's just so your pipes don't rattle in your house. And I'm like, I have PEX. I don't have pipes, you're never going to hear it, but it's a code thing. So it's like that. It's like money. But I am not afraid to ask questions. And my age, I'll ask lots of questions. I mean, I am all about that now. Whereas when you're younger, and like you were talking about earlier about reading people, and mine was just hard knocks. It was just, you learn the hard way. Yeah. You just like, hello, sir, how's it going? They're gone. You're like, gosh. you know?
Yeah.
And it was fun, but as I got older, it was like my rookie's talking to the guy and I could see the guy, you know, I'm like moving around and I'm like, look, dude, you're not going anywhere. And I said, go ahead and put him in cuffs. Oh man, I got warrants, you know, immediately, you know, they would just tell you. But I'm all about quick, you know, that was the thing too, is, you know, I like how you put that in perspective of sales, because that's what you're doing is you're selling.
Correct.
You know, you're just selling. You're trying to get these people to understand, like, hey, you're not going to jail. It's for safety, you know. And I tell people, you know, the Supreme Court, the nuggets of knowledge, the Supreme Court allows us to lie.
Absolutely.
You know, you can lie through your teeth to people. And, oh, you just lied to me. Well, yeah, I did.
Sure.
But you know what? I'm not hurt and you're not hurt.
Yeah.
So, and we're not going to end up on CNN.
Yeah.
So, and I say CNN because Fox could care less, you know, it'd be CNN. But there's always a target on your back. And I think that's one reason why I'm ready to just hang it up too and leave is for that reason, because it's not the administration. It's not the job. The job is great. It's fun.
If you can just do the job. Yeah.
And it can be stressful, but for the most part, it's, to me, I enjoy sometimes going to work because it's relaxing to me versus being at home.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, I got to go home tonight. Like crap, you know, deal with all that stuff. But,
well, you know, when you were a rookie, you hoped for chaos.
Yes.
Like the first 5-6 years that I was there, for sure, I hoped the guy would run. I hoped the guy would fight. I hope, you know, you always wanted that disaster so you could deal with it, because that's what you were there for.
I was so frustrated when it would be raining or bad weather.
And you stuck doing nothing.
I'd be pissed. Yeah. But then on 9 times out of 10, if it was bad weather, I would just kind of cruise around a little bit and I would get into stuff.
Yeah.
And it'd piss everybody else off because, like, what are you doing, Robert? Snuggled down, you know, watching TV and you're at your crate. I'm like, I just happened to just stumble on it. But I would get kind of like depressed, you know, about it. You know, our canine handlers, the dogs, they work like that. Mm-hmm. And the reason why those dogs don't live long either is because the stress and stuff, and they get depressed. Yeah. And you usually keep your dog, you retire it, and then you get a new dog. And that dog is watching that dog go to work. And they would get pumped up. Yeah. And they just get so depressed. Like, why am I not going to work? Because I always tell the handlers that they sleep all day. And then they work night shift, and the dogs would just chill out and just relax. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, when it's time for work, they would get excited. And then one guy's dog, every time you would beep the radio and make a sound, that dog would just get pissed off. And it was so funny because dispatchers would go, who was that? And you're just like, really? Do you not hear that dog just like mangling him right now? Like, it's a canine guy, but I had no desire to do that position.
I did it I had a dog for a few years, and Pyro was his name. And he didn't bark a lot, but at the radio. But he was that kind that he'd just be calm, chilled out, laying around the house like a normal little dog. And then the minute I come out of that room with my uniform on, he was like, oh, shit, here we go. And he would get pumped and ready to go. And I left him home for training one time, and he ate through the damn chain link fence and got out and was up to school.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Talk about butthole
Panic
pucker, sitting
mode,
here training, get a phone call from my wife saying the dogs got out, and then we get a call saying he's at the school.
Because a lot of people have they have a disbelief that our canine dogs are friendly.
Yeah.
No, they're not. And they don't know friend from foe. Yeah. So anytime you hear a guy, he says, I'm on the ground, or the old be in a pursuit, and he'll say, stay in your cars.
Yeah.
Because if you run, that fur missile's not coming. He's going after the first thing he sees. Now, I will say, we did have one dog that was super friendly, and it was jet black, and it would toy with the suspect. As he's running, he couldn't see him. And he said that the suspect be running, that dog would just be like bouncing next to him and kind of nip at him. It wouldn't take him down. And you're just like, the handler would get so irritated. And we'd be at events, and his dog is just so friendly. You know, he goes, I get him out of the car, he'll stand up by him. And I'm like, dude, what's up with your dog? He's just a big teddy bear. He's not mean at all. He ain't going to last. And then they had one that was so mean that no one could take care of him. Yeah. Like, it was just, he was pissed off all the time. And we had an officer keys at the kennels, and you hear, come here, you know, and then on the radio, and then it bites him. And he goes, and then dispatch like 10-9, like, who was that? And he goes, oh, sorry, get this mean dog, just bit the crap out of me, you know. But they, you know, and sometimes, you know, they're very expensive dogs too.
Oh, I mean, they're so expensive.
So, and we have a special breeder that's overseas where they get them from. Yeah. So their bloodline, I mean, and they're expensive. And if it's a bad dog, or it's not working out, it's not responding, they send it back. Like, nope, you're gonna have to deal with it. So, but that's something I never really. I was approached about it multiple times because I was a pretty active officer, and a lot of times in our department, the active ones get that position. Yeah, because they want you there, they want you involved in stuff. They
want the guy that wants, and that's why I got it at the time because. Well, the guy that had it before me had been there a long time, and he just he liked dogs. And so it was, he would work it if you called him and stuff, but he just liked dogs and he treated it like a pet. And in my interview, they asked me what I felt about police canines, and I described them as a tool. They're not a pet for me. I don't own it. It's not mine. I don't anticipate keeping it. I could at the end of when it retires, but it's a tool. Like, that was the way
it is, yeah.
It's like my gun on my belt or the radio or anything else. It's a tool, and I'm going to treat it like a tool with humanely, but I'm not going to go home and play. With those canines, if you go home and you play fetch with the dang thing, it doesn't have the drive to go find the drugs to get his toy. Like, you need to withhold. They need to be doing what they're trained to do to get those rewards, whether it's food or toy or mine was ball driven. Like, he wanted a ball all the time. But if I let him play with it all the time, and what's his incentive to go find the drugs?
Exactly.
So they're hard to deal with, and I would never do it again. I'm glad I had that experience, but I'd never do it again.
I just remember getting in one of the canine handler's car, and it just smelled so bad. I was like, hell no.
You got used to it.
Not letting my car smell like that. I mean, I don't like transients in my car half the time because it stinks. I've got this away spray I'm always spraying in my car. I just do not like that. I can't just drive around smelling like that. But
thank you for listening to this episode of the Saucy Sarge Podcast. Check us out on Facebook or anywhere else you find your favorite podcast. We'll see you on the next one.